Hello again. Now, it's said to be one of the fastest growing lifestyle movements in the UK, with 27,000 Scots choosing to go vegan. A recent study by the Vegan Society has found a 350% increase in the number of people cutting out meat and meat products in the last decade. That's 4 times higher than predicted. In a moment, we'll look at the pros and cons of vamping up the veg, but first, Amy Dunsmuir has this.
Whether it's Meat-Free Monday or Fishy Friday, we're all being encouraged to cut down on our consumption of red meat. But how many of us are prepared to give up animal products for good? Liz and John have both been vegan for over a decade. For them, it was a simple choice to make.
I was vegetarian for a few years, and then I decided to do a bit more research into animal farming and dairy farming in Britain. And from that, when you start to realise what's actually going on in the industries, it's actually appalling. So I decided from that point to change and become vegan for the animals, definitely.
The United Nations Food and Drink Organisation, they estimate that 18% of all global greenhouse gas emissions come from the animal agriculture sector. So the food choices that we make have a huge impact on the environment. So we just want to encourage a low impact for the environment and also something that's sustainable long term.
Now the pair run a vegan website, offering help and tips to others who have taken up the diet. But if you do take a venture at veganism, how good is it for you?
There are certain minerals and vitamins that meat and dairy products do contain, like calcium, iron, that a vegan wouldn't have. So it can be a very healthy diet, but it can also be unhealthy if somebody's not doing it right. So the key is just to make sure you know what you're doing, don't jump into it willy-nilly, thinking it's a really healthy thing to do, because you can become quite ill if you're not going to do it properly.
Across Great Britain, the number of vegans has risen by 350% over the last decade, meaning there are now more than 500,000 people following a vegan diet. That rise hasn't been quite as impressive in Scotland though. Here, only 2% of the population claim to be vegan. That's 27,000 people. Taking a look around Glasgow, a very different story emerges. Across the city, new vegan restaurants and cafes are continuing to open, with many other chains now opting to produce vegan-friendly dishes.
For someone like me who's been vegan for over 30 years, the change is really tangible. Because for decades, there was like nothing happening. Do you know what I mean? Anybody who was vegan and they did their own thing. And given what's been happening in the last 2-3 years, in my opinion, things couldn't be picking up any more than they are at the moment. It's really quite amazing.
Despite the low numbers of vegans in Scotland, more and more people are beginning to turn to the diet. So, whether you're mad about meat or partial to a parsnip, it's clear to see that veganism is more than just a fleeting trend. Amy Dunsmuir, STV News.
Interesting stuff. Well, if you're a meat and 2 veg fan, listen up. Here to tell us more is Emma Kinraid, who's a lecturer in nutrition and dietetics at Glasgow Caledonian University, and Craig Tannock, who runs several vegan restaurants. Thanks to both of you for coming into the studio. Craig, first of all, a significant rise in veganism over the last 10 years. What's the appeal?
Oh, it's a wide range of issues that attract people to become vegan. I still think one of the main drivers is people making an ethical choice not to be part of the global animal industry. But obviously there's also concerns about the environment and the extent to which it's now become far more mainstream that people understand the impact of the global animal industry on the environment. And then there's also health. It's becoming a lot clearer over the years how much a healthy option the vegan diet is. So there's a whole range of reasons why people are doing it.
And Emma, you talked a bit about it in the piece there, but how healthy is it in terms of lifestyle? Is there some benefits that perhaps meat and dairy can give that going vegan can't?
Okay, well, when you cut out meat and dairy products, you are cutting out a predominant source of iron from red meat and vitamin B12, which is quite hard to find in a solely vegan diet. Also calcium, milk and dairy are one of the main sources of calcium in the British diet. So there are detriments to cutting these major foods out, but there's also the pros. So a vegan diet is lower in saturated fat than a diet that contains meat and dairy products. It's also usually lower in total calories as well, so it's good for weight, keeping people's weight down and preventing obesity. But there are certain, and also, it's usually higher in fibre as well, and packed full of antioxidant vitamins, so good in terms of preventing some of the big global diseases like obesity, diabetes, heart disease and cancers.
And Craig, you mentioned some of the reasons there, but what reasons do you get for people coming to some of the outlets that you run?
I would still say first of all, it seems to be mainly younger people who are going vegan now. Well, a lot more of the younger population are going vegan than I think before. And interestingly, another trend I've spotted is 20, 30 years ago, it was quite common somebody would go vegetarian first, maybe for a couple of years or longer, and then eventually, once they find out more about the dairy industry, they would then become vegan. Now the trend seems to be to miss out the whole vegetarian stage and just go direct to vegan. I think that, again, there's lots of reasons for that. One is there's been lots of very hard-hitting documentaries made in the last 4 or 5 years, which are very, very accessible, and they've been making a big impact. Also, so people are just finding out more about the industry and making their own mind up whether they want to be part of it or not.
And Emma, off the back of that, is it something you can just jump into willy-nilly, or do you have to do some real kind of planning beforehand?
I think if you do just jump into it on the back of a whim, it can be quite detrimental to your health. So from my point of view, I would recommend that somebody really researches the vegan diet, looks into where they're going to get their key nutrients from, and really makes an effort to plan what they're going to have, just to make sure that they're going to be able to eat enough nutrients. You know, do they like enough fortified plant milks, which would replace your ordinary dairy milk? Do you like enough fruit and vegetables, pulses, nuts, seeds? Because these things make up a vast part of the vegan diet. So definitely not something to be jumped into really on a whim, I would say.
And Craig, Scots seem a bit slower to follow in the trend. Do you still see, maybe not a stigma, but still kind of an air of maybe suspicion towards going vegan?
No, not really, actually. I think it's becoming far more acceptable, and I think people are far more open-minded now than they used to be about what they eat and what other people eat. I mean, one thing that strikes me is the number of vegan businesses that are starting up in Scotland. Outside of our vegan cafe bars and a couple of other things, I would say 3 years ago, I wasn't aware of any other vegan businesses in Scotland. Over the last 2 years, particularly over the last 18 months, and particularly over the last year, there's been a plethora of small vegan businesses open all over Scotland. A great chocolatier in Dunfermline, a great nut butter company in Dundee, a craft cashew cheese firm in Glasgow, a seitan firm in Paisley, a household eco and vegan products firm in Glasgow. There's now got to be 20, 30 at least vegan companies in Scotland, as opposed to virtually 0 3 years ago.
And Emma, just in a sentence, advice to someone who's thinking about turning vegan?
Do your research, make sure you get enough vitamin B12, iodine, selenium, protein, calcium, iron.
That's brilliant. Guys, thank you so much for coming in. Get in touch with us if there's a story you think we should know about. You can contact any of our reporters by Facebook or on Twitter, and keep up to date with all the latest news on the STV News app. From all of us here in the STV News team, enjoy the rest of your evening. Goodbye for now.